his younger brother Frieza, and in doing so brought shame to the family. So obviously, the bad guy has to get revenge. And what better way to do it than destroying the earth? Hey guys, so Jesus performed a lot of miracles. And the miracle that I want to share with you today is a miracle that's especially interesting because of the way the crowd reacts to a man wanting healing. And of course, we're going to be throwing some Dragon Ball Z in there. Okay, so we start in Mark chapter 10, verse 46. And this is what it says. Then they reached Jericho, and as Jesus and his disciples left town, a large crowd followed him. A blind beggar named Bartimaeus was sitting beside the road. One interesting thing here, and it can be a little bit confusing. I had to do a little bit of research on it. At first glance, you don't know if Jesus is coming out of Jericho or if he is going into Jericho. And if you do some digging, what's actually happening here is that he went into Jericho, spent some time in Jericho, and now he's coming out, and this is where we see this blind man. Verse 47 says, when Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. And this is the crowd's reaction to this man yelling out to Jesus for healing. They say, be quiet. Many of the people yelled. Now this is where things start to get interesting. You have a crowd that is basically following Jesus because of all these miracles that he's performed helping people. And yet when they see that this man is reaching out to Jesus for healing, for help, they completely dismiss the guy. They're actually yelling at him and telling him to shut up. Like, Jesus doesn't have time for you. Our boy Bartimaeus was not going to give up that easily. So this is what the scriptures say. It says, but he only shouted louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. You see, Bartimaeus was not going to let this crowd get in the way of him potentially being able to be healed from his blindness. So here is the reaction of Jesus. Verse 49 says, when Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, tell him to come here. Now something interesting that you guys are going to want to know here is that not only is Jesus calling for this blind man, but he is also rebuking the crowd for their behavior. He's basically saying, what are you guys doing? Like, this is what I came here for. Bring this man to me. This is what the rest says. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, they said. Come on, he's calling you. Isn't it? It's kind of interesting that you see a complete change in tone from the crowd. And to be honest with you, we don't really know if they were actually repentant of what they did, like they realized what they were doing was wrong, or if they were just like, well, he told us to do this, so we're gonna do it. It's not really clear in the text if these guys really understood the lesson to be learned here from Jesus. Now, before we continue with the story, I want to share with you guys an instance in Dragon Ball Z that reminds me of what is happening here and what is going to happen. Now here's the thing, Goku is not necessarily known for his healing abilities, right? He's more known for beating up bad guys and saving the world. But in this movie that I want to share with you guys called Cooler's Revenge, we see something interesting. So Cooler, the bad guy, decides to attack Earth, and he is planning on freezing the entire Earth over with his super technique called the Cooler Ball. And he is doing all of this because Goku, not too long ago, had defeated his younger brother Frieza. And in doing so, brought shame to the family. So obviously, the bad guy has to get revenge. And what better way to do it than destroying the Earth? A massive battle ensues, and there's a lot of back and forth. Eventually, it gets to a point where Goku is getting beat down. But with the power of friendship, Goku is able to muster up a new strength that's going to help him defeat the bad guy. Here's the part that's interesting. Right before Goku transforms and goes off to fight Cooler, he sees a wooden bird. Now, amongst all of the commotion, amongst everything that is happening, he stops. He picks up this bird, and with a yellow glowing power, he heals this bird. After this, he proceeds to beat up the bad guy and destroying him. So what happened with the bird in Dragon Ball Z reminds me of what's happening with Jesus and this blind man, because Jesus himself stopped everything that was going on and he reached out to this blind man. So he goes to him and he asks him, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man responds, I want to see. Now this is what happens in verse 52. Go, for your faith has healed you. Instantly, the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. There are two takeaways here. The first one is what happens to the crowd. Jesus has to rebuke them because they have the wrong understanding of why he was there on earth. We see in Mark 2:17 that Jesus came for the sick. And this blind man was sick. Not only that, but he understood who Jesus was. He understood that Jesus was the Messiah. And that's what we're told in Mark, that Jesus ultimately came for the sick, those that understood that were sick and needed help. And that is ultimately what we see in the blind man. He recognizes Jesus as the Messiah. That's why he calls him Son of David, and ultimately is healed because his faith in who Jesus was and what he could do led him to be healed. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Make sure to check out some of the links in the description. I do have a t-shirt store, so if you want to support me in that way, that would be amazing. And I just want to remind you that we must persevere.